The slap came so fast I did not have time to react. My glasses flew off, shattering on the polished ballroom floor while more than 100 guests froze in silence. My cheek stung sharply, but the ache spreading through my chest was much worse than the blow itself. Lauren, my daughter-in-law, had just struck me on her wedding day because I would not hand over the keys to my apartment. "That is what you get for being selfish," she shouted in front of everyone, insisting that a woman my age did not need so much space. The room went still. No one helped as I bent down, shaking, to gather the pieces of my broken glasses. Some guests turned away uneasily, while others whispered behind their hands. Not one person stepped forward to defend the humiliated mother-in-law. My son Eric stood frozen, eyes fixed on the floor, pretending not to see me. "You are not welcome here anymore," Lauren continued, adjusting her spotless gown as if nothing had happened. "Eric and I need privacy to begin our new life," she said calmly. "Your apartment would be perfect while we search for something better." Her voice dripped with poison. For months, I had endured her jabs about my plain clothes, my old car, my modest habits, but this moment crossed a sacred line that should never have been touched. I rose slowly, aware of every gaze cutting through me like tiny blades. Tears slid down my face, but something inside had changed forever. That slap was not just physical pain, it was the end of endurance. For years, I had chosen humility and silence. I carried secrets no one, not even my own son, had ever known. Memories flooded back as I walked toward the exit. I remembered when Lauren first visited my apartment 2 years earlier. The disappointment on her face was impossible to miss as she scanned my small living room and old kitchen. "So this is where Eric's mother lives," she said just loud enough for me to hear. From that day, every visit felt like a quiet punishment. "Margaret, you should really downsize," she suggested at a family dinner 3 months ago. "At your age, it is hard to maintain such a large place. Besides, Eric and I plan to start a family soon. We will need more space." Her smile was polished but false. My son, under her spell, nodded along like a puppet. Each visit after that carried a new layer of humiliation. First, her comments targeted my wardrobe. "Margaret, do you own anything more modern?" Then she mocked my car, calling it unsafe for someone my age. Later, she criticized my part-time job at the small flower shop, questioning why I still worked instead of relaxing. Every remark chipped away at my dignity until I barely recognized myself. My name is Margaret Whitaker. I am 68 years old. I have always valued simplicity over show. I work 3 days a week at Maple Street Florist, drive a 10-year-old sedan, and buy clothes at outlet stores. To people like Lauren, I am just an aging widow living modestly. But that was the image I had built carefully for decades. What none of those pitying faces in the ballroom knew was that my life had once been entirely different. My late husband, Thomas, had not been the ordinary office worker people imagined. Together, we chose to live quietly, hiding our real fortune to protect our privacy, a decision that now felt prophetic. As I left the ballroom, whispers followed me like smoke. "Poor thing, she looks so fragile," murmured one woman. "The bride is right, that lady cannot live alone," another added. Someone else suggested I should be in a retirement home. Each word burned like acid on raw skin. The cool air from the vents clashed with the fire inside my chest as I searched for my phone in my worn black purse. A purse I had carried for 5 years rested on my lap, not because I lacked money for a new one, but because I had long learned to prize usefulness over appearances, a lesson my daughter-in-law would never grasp. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number engraved in my memory, one I had avoided for more than a year, hoping I would never need it again. "Marcus, it is Margaret. Come to the Cedar Crest Ballroom right now. Bring the documents we discussed. It is time for them to learn the truth." My voice trembled slightly, but a strength I had not felt in years anchored each word. "Are you certain, Mrs. Whitaker?" he asked, his tone careful but concerned. "Once we begin this, there will be no turning back." I looked over my shoulder toward the ballroom where Lauren was laughing loudly with her friends, probably boasting about putting her useless mother-in-law in her place. Eric stood beside her, smiling faintly, showing not even a hint of guilt. "Completely certain," I said firmly. 30 minutes, Marcus, no more." I ended the call and walked to my car with steady determination. For the first time in years, I was ready to remove the mask I had worn to protect my family. For the first time, they would see who I truly was. And when that moment came, when truth shattered their perfect illusions, they would finally understand the meaning of regret. The parking lot was silent, bathed in the soft glow of streetlights stretching long shadows across the asphalt. I sat in my old sedan and waited 30 minutes for their lives to shift forever. 30 minutes for them to realize the depth of their mistake in humiliating the woman who had quietly sustained them more than they would ever know. As I waited in my car, memories surged like a flood I could not stop. It had all begun 2.5 years earlier, the day Eric arrived at my apartment with that familiar, nervous smile from his childhood. "Mom, I want you to meet someone very special," he had said. And there she was, Lauren, with her flawless hair, her expensive outfit, and that practiced smile that never reached her eyes. From the moment she stepped inside, I sensed something wrong. Her gaze swept over my apartment, judging every inch with hidden disdain. "How cozy," she murmured, inspecting my second-hand furniture and faded curtains. Her tone meant the opposite. Eric, blinded by what he thought was love, noticed nothing. That first dinner was an awkward disaster. Lauren barely touched the meal I had cooked with care, saying she was watching her figure. When I asked about her family, she dodged the questions and instead asked about my finances, her curiosity sharp and unsettling. She wanted to know how I managed on a widow's pension, pretending concern while measuring my worth. But what she did not realize was that I had been watching her too. In the months that followed, her behavior revealed itself piece by piece. Each visit brought new remarks about how outdated my home was and how I deserved better in my later years. Yet her eyes always lingered where it mattered: the prime location, the open view from the balcony, the generous rooms. One afternoon, while Eric was in the bathroom, I overheard her whispering on the phone. "Yes, Mom, his mother's apartment is in an expensive area. If I can convince her to move to something smaller, we could stay here for a while. She is so naive, she will probably thank us for helping her," she said softly. Her words pierced me like a blade, but I kept calm when she returned, pretending nothing had happened. From that moment forward, every encounter with Lauren became a quiet duel of smiles and hidden intentions, a performance we both played to perfection. She played the caring daughter-in-law, pretending concern for my well-being, while I played the fragile older woman who seemed to need direction. Inside, I was taking notes, studying her patterns, learning her intentions. It felt like a slow game of chess where both sides believed they were ahead. Over time, her manipulation grew more confident and deliberate. At first, the words came wrapped in kindness. "Margaret, I have seen some lovely apartments designed for people your age, with every service included." Then came the pressure. "You cannot keep living alone like this. What if you fall and no one finds you?" Each remark was crafted to make me feel incapable, small, and dependent. Eric, my own son, began repeating her words exactly, like a rehearsed echo. "Mom, Lauren is right. Maybe you should think about a smaller place." Watching him become her puppet hurt more deeply than any insult could. The boy I had raised with love and sacrifice now saw me as a barrier to his happiness. After they announced their engagement, the psychological campaign intensified. Their visits grew more frequent and tense. Lauren began arriving with glossy brochures for senior communities, laying them out like business proposals. "I only want you to have the best life possible," she would say, her voice sweet but hollow. I had started my own quiet investigation. One afternoon, while they were out on wedding errands, I called my friend Denise, who worked in real estate. "Denise," I said, "there is a couple interested in my apartment. I need to know the truth about their finances." What she found chilled me to the core. Lauren and Eric were drowning in debt. Their wedding alone cost more than $50,000, financed entirely through loans and credit cards. Their apartment lease was weeks from eviction. Their cars carried payments they could not meet. The life they displayed was nothing more than an illusion built on borrowed money. Suddenly, everything became clear. The rush to get married, the push for me to move, the endless talk about my supposed fragility, it all connected. Love had nothing to do with this union. It was desperation wearing a wedding dress, and my apartment, sitting in one of Portland's most desirable areas, was their escape route. The truth struck me like another slap. My son, once proud and honest, had chosen deceit over dignity. He had let ambition and greed replace the love that once guided him. The woman beside him had turned him into someone I no longer recognized. My heart broke quietly under the weight of that realization. In the final days before the wedding, their demands turned shameless. "Margaret, you cannot keep being selfish," Lauren said 3 days before the ceremony. "We have sacrificed so much for this marriage. The least you can do is help us with housing." Her words no longer hid behind courtesy. They were open threats disguised as family duty. That night, I reached for the phone again. Marcus, my trusted financial advisor since Thomas passed away, answered on the first ring. "Marcus, I need you to prepare the documents," I said. "I may have to reveal what I have kept hidden for years." His tone grew heavy. "Mrs. Whitaker, are you certain this is the right moment?" He reminded me that once the truth came out, I could never return to silence. The damage to family ties would be permanent, but the decision had already been made. I had protected them long enough. It was time for the truth to defend itself, no matter the cost. But I had already made up my mind. The family I had once shielded through silence had chosen betrayal over loyalty. Sitting in my car in the Cedar Crest ballroom parking lot, waiting for Marcus to arrive with the documents that would alter everything, I understood the moment of truth had come. 25 minutes more, and Lauren, Eric, and all those guests who had looked at me with pity would finally learn who Margaret Whitaker truly was. 25 minutes, and their perfect world built on greed would collapse like sand washed away by the tide. A gentle night breeze stirred the trees, scattering shadows across the pavement. It felt strangely poetic that on such a calm, beautiful evening, so many illusions were about to die. 20 minutes had passed since my call, each one stretching endlessly. From where I sat, I could see the golden glow of the ballroom, hear the music and laughter spilling through open windows. Soon that celebration would turn into a reckoning for its stars. I closed my eyes and let the sharpest memories of recent months flood back. I needed to remember exactly why I had reached this point of no return. The greatest humiliation had taken place just 2 weeks before the wedding, during what Lauren had called an important family discussion. It had been a trap set with careful precision. She had arrived at my apartment with Eric and her parents in tow, an ambush disguised as concern. "Margaret, we need to talk about your future," her mother began, a polished woman who looked at me as though I were a burden she wished gone. Her father followed, his eyes sweeping the room like an appraiser examining property. "We believe it is time you make responsible choices," he said smoothly. "At your age, living alone in such a big place is unsafe. What if you fall and no one finds out for days?" Their words were rehearsed, too perfect to be genuine. Eric sat there silent, nodding occasionally like a man trained to obey. Seeing him beside people who saw me as an obstacle felt like watching my own child's light fade before my eyes. "Mom," he finally said, his voice no longer his own, "they are right. Lauren and I think it would be better for everyone if you moved somewhere more suitable for your age." The words pierced me like ice through the heart. "Appropriate for my age," I repeated, feeling anger rise from deep within. "And who decides what is appropriate for me? You?" Lauren's mother exchanged a quick glance with her husband, as if confirming their assumptions. "Margaret, we know this is hard, but you must think about what is best for Eric and Lauren," she said. "What is best for them?" I murmured, the truth dawning slowly. "I suppose my apartment would be ideal for them to begin their married life, would it not?" The silence that followed was all the confirmation I needed. Every detail had been planned. Their words, their tone, their psychological pressure. Lauren took the lead, using every weapon of false tenderness she had mastered. "Margaret, it is not just about the apartment," she said. "It is about your well-being. We found a lovely residence for people your age, with 24-hour care, activities, and prepared meals. You would make friends," she promised with that polished smile. "What I am going through?" I asked softly, pretending confusion. "And what exactly do you think I am going through, Lauren?" She glanced at Eric for support before replying. "Loneliness, uncertainty, fear of not being able to manage alone. It is normal at your age, Margaret. You should not feel ashamed of needing help." The arrogance of that young woman left me speechless. But then I saw something in her eyes that froze my blood. It was the calm confidence of someone who believed she owned not only my home but my very life. To her, I was no longer a woman with choices, only a barrier to be cleared away quietly. Her father opened a folder they had clearly prepared, his tone slick and practiced. "We have done the math," he said. "The residence would cost about $2,500 a month. Selling your apartment would easily cover that for years, and there would still be enough left to help Eric and Lauren start their married life. There it was, the truth stripped bare. This had never been about my safety. It was about money. It was about turning my home into cash to fund their crumbling lifestyle. And if I refuse, I asked, though I already knew the answer. Mom, Eric said, sounding rehearsed, we hope you will not force us to take drastic steps. If your mental health keeps declining, we may have to act. The threat was clear as daylight. If I did not comply, they would find a way to declare me unfit to manage my own life. They had researched every step, laying the groundwork to seize what was mine through legal manipulation if persuasion failed. My own son sat there, allowing strangers to plan his mother's ruin. The betrayal felt colder than any winter night. That evening after they left, I wept for the first time in years, not out of sorrow, but because the illusion of family had finally died. Through my tears, I called Marcus. I need you to look into something urgent, I said. Find out everything about my son and his fiancée, their debts, their income, their truth, every detail. The results crushed me. Eric earned $45,000 a year as an account manager but owed over $80,000 in credit card debt. Lauren worked part-time as a social media stylist, earning maybe $4,000 a year, yet spent like a celebrity. Together they owed more than $120,000, not counting their wedding loans. Their rented apartment, $2,000 a month, was 3 months behind. Their luxury cars swallowed 60% of their combined income. Credit cards maxed out. They had begun using cash advances to pay off other bills. They were sinking fast, and my apartment was their lifeline. But one discovery hurt worse than all the numbers combined. For 6 months, Eric had been calling banks, asking about loans secured by his elderly mother's property. He had even inquired about gaining financial power of attorney over seniors. My own child had been plotting my dispossession with cold precision. And yet, the worst came at the end of Marcus's report. According to a private investigator, Lauren had been telling her friends that she had sacrificed herself by marrying an older, unremarkable man because his mother owned valuable assets and had no other heirs. To her, marriage was not love, it was an investment strategy. That realization ended any trace of denial left in me. For a brief moment, I had thought of revealing the truth about my finances, hoping honesty might awaken their conscience. But that illusion vanished the moment I finished reading the report. This was not desperation. It was greed pure, deliberate greed that had reshaped my son into someone I could no longer recognize. The days before the wedding were a slow torment. Every call from Eric was another plea for me to reconsider. Every visit from Lauren carried more venom, more insults disguised as concern. Each word pushed me further toward a decision that would end their deceit forever. They had begun treating me as if I were already a confused old woman whose words carried no weight. The night before the wedding, Eric made his final attempt. Mom, tomorrow is the most important day of my life. Please do not ruin it by being difficult. Lauren only wants what is best for everyone. Hearing that was the final confirmation that I had lost my son for good. The man preparing to marry the next morning was no longer the boy I had raised with tenderness and sacrifice. Sitting in my car, waiting for Marcus, I finally accepted that everything had led to this moment. It was not about vengeance or cruelty. It was about justice, about reminding them that every choice has consequences. Some boundaries should never be crossed. 15 more minutes, and everything would change forever. My hands shook as I dialed the number of Walter, my next-door neighbor, a 70-year-old man who had quietly witnessed the tension of recent months. Walter, it is Margaret, I said, my voice trembling. Could you bring me the brown folder from the second drawer of my desk? It is urgent. Walter had been like a brother to me since Thomas passed away, and I knew he would not question my request. As I waited, I remembered our conversation a week earlier. He had seen Lauren arriving with a real estate appraiser while I was out. Margaret, that woman brought a man who was measuring your apartment, he had warned. When they noticed me, they left quickly. Walter was the first to notice how Eric had changed. Your son does not greet me anymore, he told me. He used to stop for a chat, now he hurries past like a man carrying guilt. His words only confirmed what I already sensed. I had lost my son long before the slap that night. The folder I had asked for held papers no one in my family had ever seen. Inside were bank certificates, property titles, and investment statements that Thomas and I had kept hidden for decades. They proved that the modest widow everyone pitied was, in truth, a woman with enough wealth to alter lives. 10 minutes later, Walter appeared in the parking lot, the brown folder in hand, his expression full of concern. "Margaret, what is happening? You look so upset," he asked, passing me the documents. "It has to do with Eric's wedding," I said softly, explaining what had occurred in the ballroom. His face hardened with each word. "That woman is poison," he muttered. "I always suspected it. Walter, soon a man named Marcus will arrive. Tell him I am waiting here. And Walter, after tonight, many things will change. I want you to know you have always been family to me." His eyes filled with tears as he nodded. "You are family to me too, Margaret. Do what you must." As he returned to the building, I opened the folder and began to examine papers I had not touched in months. The first document was a bank statement showing $5,400,000 in an investment account. The second was the title for an office building downtown that generated $50,000 a month in rent. The third was the deed to a beach house in Cannon Beach, an investment from 10 years earlier. Thomas had been brilliant with finances, starting from a small import business and quietly building a fortune. Together, we had chosen to live simply, believing that modesty would protect our family. "Visible wealth attracts problems," he used to say. "Invisible wealth gives you strength." I never imagined that one day I would use that strength against my own son. Each page in that folder represented years of effort and wise decisions. The flower shop where I worked 3 days a week was never about money. It was about purpose, about staying active, about remaining part of a world that, until that night, I still believed was kind. The old car I drove was never a sign of hardship. It was a choice born from experience, from knowing that excess only invites trouble. The apartment Lauren desired so much was actually the least valuable property I owned. I had bought it not for its worth, but for its memories. It was where Thomas and I had shared our last years, where he had died in my arms after his long fight with cancer. But inside that folder was something that would change everything for Eric and Lauren. For 3 years, since my son's financial troubles began, I had quietly been paying off many of his debts. The credit card payments he believed came from work bonuses were mine. The discounted rent he thought he had negotiated was money I sent each month. Without Eric ever realizing it, I had been funding his careless life for years. The luxury apartment he showed off, the car he drove, even part of the wedding now unfolding inside that ballroom, all of it had been made possible by my secret help. I believed I was supporting my son through a rough patch, never imagining I was enabling his downfall. The records in my hands revealed monthly transfers totaling $4,500 money he thought came from luck or extra work. In truth, it was a desperate mother shielding her son from his own recklessness. The irony was cruel. While Lauren mocked me for being a burden, I was the reason their marriage was even possible. While they plotted to steal my apartment to escape their debt, I had been saving them for years. I closed the folder and looked back toward the glowing ballroom. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the music, it all continued, unaware that within minutes everything would change. Marcus would arrive soon, bringing the papers that would end my silent protection. In less than 5 minutes, I would begin cutting every financial tie that had allowed my son to betray me. "This is not revenge," I whispered to myself. "This is justice. This is about teaching them that greed has a price, that love is not a bank account, and that family cannot be bought or sold for comfort." I had sheltered Eric from consequences for too long, and that false safety had turned him into someone I no longer recognized. Headlights pierced the night, flooding the lot in white light. Marcus had arrived, punctual as always, carrying the documents that would change everything forever. I stepped out of my car and walked toward him, each step carrying me further from the woman I had been, closer to the one I needed to become. "Mrs. Whitaker," he greeted, holding a thick folder beneath his arm. "Are you certain about this? Once we begin, there is no undoing it." His eyes searched mine for hesitation. I looked toward the ballroom one final time, imagining Eric and Lauren still basking in their shallow triumph over the useless old woman they thought they had conquered. "I have never been more certain of anything, Marcus," I said. "It is time they meet the real Margaret Whitaker." Marcus opened the folder beneath the soft glow of the streetlight and began explaining the contents with quiet precision. "Mrs. Whitaker, "This is the order for the immediate suspension of all bank transfers you have been making in Eric Whitaker's name," he said, pointing to the first page. The moment of truth had finally begun. "Also, here is the notice to terminate the lease you had quietly guaranteed. The landlord will receive this tomorrow morning," Marcus said. I took the papers with shaking but resolute hands. Each one represented a thread I had spun for years to shield my son, and now I was cutting through them one by one. "And the payment for the ballroom?" I asked, though I already knew. "Cancelled," he confirmed. "The deposit you guaranteed will be withdrawn tonight. By morning, they will need a new form of payment." The weight of what I was doing hit me like a cold tide. For 3 years, I had been the invisible net holding Eric and Lauren's world together. Their apartment, their cars, even the very wedding unfolding inside that ballroom had all been made possible by me. And now, in one single night, I was pulling every support away for good. "Marcus," I said as I signed each document with steady resolve, "this is not vengeance. It is the only way for them to learn the true worth of what they take for granted. I protected them too long from the outcome of their choices, and that protection twisted them into strangers." "I understand, Mrs. Whitaker," he said with quiet respect. "In my 30 years as a financial advisor, I have seen many families collapse under greed and entitlement. What you are doing tonight takes more courage than most people could ever summon." His words gave me strength for what came next. We walked together toward the ballroom doors. My heart raced not with fear, but with a strange blend of grief for what was lost and pride for what I was reclaiming. My dignity, my self-respect, my right to be treated as a human being, not as a resource to exploit. The music stopped the moment we stepped inside. Over 100 pairs of eyes turned toward us. I could see confusion ripple through the crowd. Some recognized Marcus immediately. He had long managed the finances of several prominent families in Portland. His appearance at any social event usually meant serious business. Lauren reacted first, shouting from the dance floor where she had been posing for photographs with Eric. "What are you doing here, Margaret? You already left once. Wasn't that enough drama for one night?" Her tone carried that familiar arrogance, but beneath it was a flicker of unease. She sensed something had changed. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus began in his calm, professional voice, "I apologize for interrupting, but I have urgent legal matters to discuss with Mr. Eric Whitaker and Mrs. Lauren Price." The silence was heavy enough to hear the hum of the air conditioner. Guests pulled out their phones, realizing they were about to witness something unforgettable. Eric walked toward us slowly, his face pale, his expression unsteady. "What is happening, Mom?" he asked, his voice no longer confident. "Who is this man, and why is he talking about legal issues?" His hands trembled slightly as he adjusted his tie, the same nervous tic he had since childhood. "Eric," I said, my voice steadier than it had been in months. "This is Marcus Cole, my financial and legal advisor. He is here to deliver some documents that will make things clear to you." Marcus opened his folder and read from the first page. "Mr. Eric Whitaker, the financial guarantee your mother provided for your lease has been immediately revoked. Your landlord will be informed tomorrow morning. You will have 30 days to find a new guarantor or vacate the property." All color drained from Eric's face. "Financial guarantee," he repeated faintly, looking at me with widening eyes as the realization sank in. "Mom, what is he talking about?" Eric asked, though I could see in his eyes that part of him already knew. Deep down, he had long suspected that his good fortune was not entirely his own, but he had chosen silence rather than face the truth. Marcus continued steadily. "The monthly transfers of $4,500 your mother made to your personal accounts have been permanently stopped. This includes credit card payments, car insurance, and other expenses you believed came from other sources." Lauren gasped, her voice echoing across the ballroom. "That is impossible!" she cried, rushing toward us, her gown dragging behind her. "Eric does not have a wealthy mother. Look at her, at her clothes, her car. She is just an old woman living on scraps of a pension." Her panic spread through the crowd, and whispers rose like wind in the hall. Finally, Marcus pulled out the last document. "The guaranteed payment for this event has also been revoked," he announced. "The management of Cedar Crest Ballroom now has the right to demand full payment before guests can leave tonight." His words fell like thunder. I saw movement ripple through the crowd as uneasy guests edged toward the exits. Eric's face drained of color. "You," he stammered, his voice faltering. "All this time, You have been paying for everything." For a moment, I saw the frightened boy he once was, lost and bewildered. "For 3 years, Eric," I said quietly, my tone calm after so much turmoil. 3 years in which I thought I was helping you survive a hard period. 3 years believing you would find your strength again. 3 years hoping you would remember the values I taught you." Lauren began pacing, hands clutching her head, her voice breaking into frantic screams. "This is not real. It cannot be. You are a poor old woman. You work at a flower shop. You drive a 10-year-old car. You cannot possibly have money. Appearances can deceive, Lauren," I said at last, feeling decades of restraint dissolve into the air. "For years, my husband and I lived quietly because we believed that visible wealth invites problems. We were right. We simply misjudged where the danger would come from." The music had long stopped. The only sound was the heavy breathing of the newlyweds and the low hum of murmurs as guests began realizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. Phones appeared, cameras recording, as though they knew this moment would soon become legend. Then Eric spoke again, his voice fragile and trembling. "Mom, please, there must be a way to undo this. The wedding, the guests, everything." But his eyes betrayed him. He was beginning to understand that what he had lost was not wealth but love. The only love that had asked for nothing in return. The love of a mother who had sacrificed 35 years for a son who no longer knew her. "The only way to fix this, Eric," I said softly, "is not to break it in the first place." The silence that followed swallowed the entire room. Every guest stood frozen, holding their breath, absorbing what they had just witnessed. For the first time that night, Lauren did not move. Her eyes darted between Marcus, the papers, and my face, searching for a way out of a truth she could no longer deny. Eric just stared at me with a look I will never forget, a mixture of disbelief, late realization, and pure horror. "Mrs. Whitaker," Marcus said clearly so everyone could hear, "would you like me to continue with the financial details?" His words hung in the air like a blade suspended above the couple's heads. The crowd began to edge closer, their curiosity stronger than their manners. "Please, Marcus," I said softly, my voice steady in a way I did not recognize. "Everyone here deserves to know the truth." Lauren tried to interrupt, her voice shrill with panic, but Marcus raised his hand and continued with the precision of a surgeon. "Over the past 36 months, Mrs. Margaret Whitaker has transferred a total of $162,000 to support her son Eric Whitaker and his fiancée. This amount includes $48,000 for rent, $44,000 for credit cards, $18,000 for vehicle insurance, and $22,000 for various other expenses." A low murmur spread across the ballroom like a wave. Guests exchanged glances, some whispering, some pulling out phones to check the math. Lauren's mother, who had remained silent at the main table, slowly rose, her face ghost white. Furthermore, Marcus continued without pause. "Mrs. Whitaker personally guaranteed the total cost of this celebration venue, catering, music, flowers, and photography, for an amount of $53,000. Funds which, as I mentioned earlier, are no longer available to cover these costs." Lauren finally spoke, but what came out was closer to a wail than speech. "This cannot be true. It is a lie. No one can have that kind of money and live like a pauper." She turned to the crowd as if searching for allies, but saw only astonished faces and a few smirks at her panic. "My dear Lauren," I said calmly, "you have just learned an important lesson about judging people by appearances. For years, my husband Thomas and I chose to live quietly because we valued peace more than display. It turned out to be a wise choice." Eric finally moved toward me, his steps hesitant. "Mom, there must be an explanation, some way to fix this. You cannot do this. You cannot destroy my life like this." His voice cracked on the last words, and for a heartbeat, I felt the ache of a mother who had once loved him more than herself. "Destroy your life," I repeated, feeling my anger rise once again. "I am destroying your life. Was it not your wife who slapped me in front of more than 100 people? Was it not you who stood there, silent, while I was humiliated? Was it not you who planned to take my home from me?" The weight of those words echoed across the room like a bell. Several guests nodded, recalling that night's public slap. Some even had video evidence on their phones, proof of the cruelty that had set all of this in motion. "But that was different," Eric muttered weakly. "We did not know. We thought you needed help." His excuses sounded hollow even to him, and I saw several guests exchange looks of disdain. "You did not know," I said, my voice rising for the first time that evening. "You did not know you were planning an ambush to force me to sell my house. You did not know you brought an appraiser into my home without my consent." The silence that followed carried a truth that no one in that room could deny. "You did not know you had been researching legal ways to have me declared incompetent if I refused to cooperate." With each question, Eric's shoulders slumped lower. Marcus took the moment to pull another paper from his folder. "Mr. Whitaker," he said evenly, "your mother has chosen to amend her will. All assets once intended for your inheritance will now be donated to organizations protecting seniors from family exploitation." The effect of his words rippled through the room like a silent detonation. Lauren stumbled backward as if struck. "You cannot do that," she screamed, the mask of control slipping completely. "We are your family. Eric is your only son. You cannot disinherit him over a foolish argument." "A foolish argument," I repeated, letting the phrase linger in the charged air. "Is that what you call a deliberate scheme to rob an elderly woman of her home? Is that how you defend slapping your husband's mother on her own wedding day?" My tone turned to ice, and I noticed a few guests flinch. Lauren's father, who had stood aside through the chaos, stepped forward wearing the look of a man realizing he had made a terrible wager. "Mrs. Whitaker, I think we are all just overwhelmed by the day's emotions," he said quickly. "Perhaps this could be discussed privately once everyone has calmed down." His voice trembled with a politeness born of panic. "There is nothing to discuss in private," I answered, my words firm and steady. "Everything that needed to be said has been said here, before the same eyes that saw my humiliation. You chose to make this public, so my answer will remain public." Heads turned back and forth between us as if watching a courtroom drama unfold in real time. Marcus closed his folder with a sharp sound that echoed through the ballroom. "Mrs. Whitaker, all documents have been presented. Their legal effect takes place immediately," he said. Then, turning to the couple with measured professionalism, he added, "I suggest you contact your legal and financial advisors as soon as possible." Lauren's composure finally shattered. She sank into a nearby chair, sobbing openly, her cries echoing across the hall. "Everything is ruined," she whispered between gasps. "Everything we planned, everything we worked for." Her wedding gown, once pristine, was now wrinkled and stained with tears. "No," I said softly, stepping closer to her for the first time since that slap. "What is destroyed are the lies, the greed, and the arrogance. What has ended is the illusion that you can treat people as tools without ever paying the price." I stopped in front of her, meeting her eyes. "This is what happens when kindness is mistaken for weakness." Eric knelt beside his wife, placing a shaking hand on her shoulder. "Lauren, we have to fix this somehow," he said, though even as he spoke, I could see in his eyes that he already knew the truth. Some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. "There is a way to fix this, Eric," I said quietly. "You can learn from it. You can change. You can still become the man I once believed you could be, before greed and pride consumed everything that was good in you." My voice softened slightly, because despite everything, he was still my son. "But that change will have to come without my help, without my home, and without my inheritance. You will have to learn the hard way, just as everyone else does." The ballroom remained silent, each guest fully aware that they were witnessing the final fracture of a family bond that could never be restored. Marcus and I turned toward the exit, leaving behind a hall filled with stunned faces and a pair of newlyweds whose perfect world had collapsed in less than 30 minutes. As we approached the doors, a trembling voice broke the silence. "Wait, Margaret." It was Lily, Eric's younger sister, who had been sitting quietly at a back table throughout the confrontation. She ran toward me, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Aunt Margaret," she said through sobs, "I swear I did not know any of this. Eric never told me what they were planning." Lily had always been my favorite niece, a 29-year-old teacher who had stayed close to me even after her brother pulled away. "If I had known, I would have tried to stop them," she said. I stopped and looked at her, recognizing in her eyes the same sincerity she had shown since childhood. "I know, Lily," I said softly, placing my hand gently on her face. "You have always been different. You never treated people as opportunities to be used." Her tears flowed harder as she nodded, her heart breaking over her brother's betrayal. But why did you never tell us about the money, she asked, her voice filled with genuine confusion. Why keep such a secret for so many years? It was a fair question, and it deserved an honest answer, especially from someone who had always treated me with love and respect. Because your Uncle Thomas and I learned long ago that money changes people, I explained quietly, as a few guests edged closer to listen. We saw families torn apart by inheritance, friendships ruined over loans, children who began to see their parents as open wallets. We chose to live modestly to protect what truly mattered, the relationships built on care and sincerity. Lily nodded slowly, her expression shifting from sorrow to understanding, absorbing the truth in my words. But Eric, he was not always like this, she said softly. When we were kids, he would have defended you against anyone. What happened to him? Her question carried all the pain of a sister who no longer recognized her own brother. What happened was Lauren, I answered, not bitterly, but with a quiet sadness that came from acceptance. What happened was greed wrapped in affection, ambition without conscience, and my own mistake of shielding him from the lessons life meant for him. My words drifted through the ballroom, where the remaining guests listened, captivated and somber. Marcus had been standing aside respectfully, but now he stepped closer, lowering his voice. Mrs. Whitaker, the venue manager, is approaching. It appears he has just received notice about the cancellation of payment. I turned and saw a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit walking quickly toward us, papers clutched in his hands, his expression tense. Mrs. Whitaker, he began. I just received an urgent notice of payment revocation. The contract guarantees coverage until tomorrow morning. Could you explain what is happening? His presence brought the full weight of reality crashing into the room. Mr. Franklin, I said calmly, recalling his name from when we had arranged the event in secret. The financial guarantee I provided for this celebration has been withdrawn due to serious revelations that have surfaced tonight. I gestured toward Eric and Lauren, still standing motionless at the center of the ballroom, frozen in disbelief. I understand, Franklin said, scanning the scene with the calm of someone who had managed social events for decades. And who will be responsible for the payment now? The outstanding balance is $53,000, covering the hall, catering, music, flowers, and photography. His tone was steady but uncompromising, making it clear this issue demanded immediate resolution. Eric finally moved, walking toward us in hesitant steps. Mr. Franklin, there must be some mistake, he said, his voice trembling. My mother cannot just cancel a payment like this. We are family. We can fix this. His words carried a desperation I had never heard before, the sound of a man realizing too late what he had lost. Young man, Franklin replied with the forced patience of a professional, the guarantee was provided by Mrs. Whitaker personally. She has every legal right to revoke it at any time. Unless an alternate payment is arranged immediately, I will have to suspend the event. Lauren stumbled forward, her gown torn, her makeup streaked with tears. You cannot do this, she shouted at Franklin. It is our wedding day. You cannot ruin it over money. Her voice trembled with hysteria, and the guests began whispering anxiously among themselves. Ma'am, Franklin answered, his tone now firmer, I am not ruining anything. I am simply enforcing the contract you signed. Without payment, I must end the event and ask the guests to leave. His words landed like a final verdict. The reality of the situation began to sink in. Some guests quietly gathered their belongings, slipping out through the doors. Others stayed, unable to look away from the spectacle unfolding before them. Mom, Eric said, his eyes wet for the first time since childhood. Please, I know we did wrong. I know we hurt you. But there are so many people here. So many memories being made. You cannot destroy everything over a single fight. His voice broke, and for a fleeting second, I saw the little boy who used to run into my arms after scraping his knee. Eric, I said softly, I am not destroying anything. You did this yourself, when you traded love for greed, when you replaced honesty with manipulation, when you stood by as I was humiliated instead of defending me as your mother. Each word struck deep, but they were truths that had long needed to be spoken. But what are we supposed to do? Lauren cried, her panic rising as she looked at the guests still trickling out. How are we going to explain this? How will we pay for any of it? Her voice trembled with genuine fear, the fear of someone finally seeing the cost of her choices. You will do what responsible people do, I told her calmly. You will earn your way. You will live within your means. You will learn what it truly means to work for what you want." My voice grew stronger with each word, years of quiet restraint now turning into clarity. Marcus stepped closer, speaking quietly. "Mrs. Whitaker, everything is finalized. All documents have been delivered. There is nothing more we can do here." His words were gentle but firm, a reminder that it was time to walk away. Lily came up to me again, her eyes red from crying, and wrapped her arms around me tightly. "Aunt Margaret," she whispered, "you will always have my love and my respect, no matter what happens with Eric." Her embrace was warm, sincere, and in that moment I felt something I had not felt all night: peace. Her words struck my wounded heart like a healing blow, reminding me that not all family was tainted by greed. "And you will always have mine, Lily," I said, returning her embrace. "Remember this night when life forces you to choose. Character is not measured by what we possess, but by how we treat those we love." Her tears soaked my shoulder as she nodded, fully grasping the weight of the moment. Franklin returned once more, his composure thinning. "Ladies and gentlemen, I need an immediate resolution," he said firmly. "My staff cannot remain without payment assurance." His tone carried the weary patience of a man who had seen too many celebrations collapse under their own deceit. "You have my number," I told Eric and Lauren one last time. "When you are ready to speak about respect, about responsibility and truth, when you finally understand what it means to earn what you have, when you can look me in the eye and offer an honest apology, then you may call me. But first," I added, meeting their desperate stares, "you will have to face the chaos you created entirely on your own." With those words, I turned and walked away beside Marcus, leaving behind a ballroom filled with despair, whispers, and the heavy scent of consequences. 3 days after the wedding, my apartment had become a sanctuary of quiet I had not known in years. Joseph came by each morning with coffee and pastries from the corner bakery, checking in after what he called the night Margaret reclaimed her dignity. His presence soothed my spirit, reminding me that chosen family can sometimes mean more than blood. For 3 straight days, the phone never stopped ringing. Eric had called 37 times, his messages shifting from rage to pleading. Lauren had sent 14 frantic texts. Her parents had even come to my door twice, demanding I undo what I had done. But I stayed calm and unshaken. Marcus visited that morning with news I had expected, though hearing it aloud still stung. "Mrs. Whitaker," he said gently over tea on my balcony, "I have updates. Eric and Lauren were evicted yesterday morning. The venue has filed legal action to recover the $53,000 owed. Their credit cards are now frozen for default." "And where are they staying?" I asked, though I already sensed the answer. "With Lauren's parents," he replied. "It's a cramped 2-bedroom apartment already filled with 3 people. The atmosphere, according to my sources, is tense." His tone made it clear that tense was a mild way of putting it. Later that afternoon, while watering my plants, I saw a familiar car pull up in front of the building. It was Lily, and she was not alone. With her came Amelia, my old friend from the real estate world, and to my surprise, Joseph stepped out from the back seat. "Margaret," Lily called from the sidewalk, "we need to talk. There are things you should know." When they entered my apartment, their faces carried urgency and worry that immediately set me on edge. "Margaret," Lily began, "I've been looking into some things since the wedding. Things you must hear before it is too late." She sat on the couch, a folder in her hands that looked as serious as the one Marcus had carried that night. "Too late for what?" I asked, steadying myself as I poured her tea. Amelia cleared her throat softly and took over. "Margaret," she said, "for the past 3 days I have been reviewing Eric and Lauren's financial records. What I found goes far beyond what we imagined. They had been planning everything for more than a year." As she opened the folder, the documents inside made my stomach twist with a sense of dread I had not felt since that night in the ballroom. I found proof that Lauren had been consulting attorneys who specialize in elder competency cases. They had mapped out a detailed strategy to have you declared legally unfit and take control of all your assets. Joseph, who had been silent until then, leaned forward with a grim look. "Margaret, there is something else you need to hear. That night, after you left the venue, I overheard Lauren on the phone. She said the old woman had ruined everything, but that they still had a plan B. His words made my stomach twist. "Plan B," I repeated, my voice shaking with anger and fear. Lily reached over and gently held my hand. "Aunt Margaret, They are telling everyone you have lost your mind. They are saying the wedding scene was proof you are no longer capable of managing your affairs. They are preparing to convince a judge to declare you mentally incompetent. The depth of their betrayal spread before me like a dark storm. It was not enough to have humiliated me, plotted against me, and stolen my dignity. Now they wanted to erase my sanity to finish what they started. It was cruelty beyond what I thought possible. "But that is not all," Amelia said, her voice trembling as she opened another folder. "Lauren has been spreading rumors in the neighborhood. She has been visiting your neighbors, hinting that they should report anything unusual about your behavior." The precision of her defamation left me speechless. At that moment, Marcus arrived for our meeting and immediately sensed the tension in the room. "Mrs. Whitaker, I see you have already been informed about some of the recent actions," he said, his face more serious than I had ever seen. "I have additional information that supports what your friends discovered. Eric filed a preliminary petition yesterday. He is requesting that the court evaluate your mental capacity, citing what he calls irrational behavior and irresponsible financial decisions. He even included sworn statements from guests who were at the wedding." "Sworn statements?" I asked, fury beginning to overtake the shock. "What kind of statements?" Marcus reviewed his papers before answering. "Statements describing your emotional outburst as unjustified, claims portraying you as vindictive, erratic, and unable to make reasoned choices." Lily squeezed my hand tighter. "Aunt Margaret, they convinced several people to sign declarations. Most of them have no idea what truly happened. They only saw an older woman confronting a young couple." Her frustration was palpable, the voice of someone who knew the truth yet could not make others see it. "But we have good news too," Joseph said suddenly, his tone lifting slightly. "There are more people on your side than they realize." He pulled out his phone and showed me something that left me speechless. "Joseph, what is this?" I asked. It was a social media video with thousands of views. "Margaret, remember how several guests were recording that night? Those clips have gone viral. People are not seeing a senile woman losing control. They are seeing a woman of strength, standing up for herself and exposing years of manipulation and abuse with dignity and courage." Amelia leaned closer to the phone. "Margaret, the comments on these videos are overwhelmingly in your favor. People are admiring your strength, your calm under pressure, your courage to set boundaries. Many are sharing their own experiences with family exploitation. You have become a voice for countless seniors who have suffered in silence." Marcus nodded approvingly. "This public reaction could prove invaluable if the case reaches court. It is difficult to claim someone is mentally unfit when thousands of people are praising their clarity, composure, and sense of justice." His professional smile returned, hinting that perhaps the legal battle ahead might not be so one-sided after all. "There is something else you should know," I said, finally ready to act on a decision I had been weighing for 3 long days. "If Eric and Lauren want to fight, if they want to make this public, then they are about to find out exactly who they are dealing with." I walked to my desk, where I had been quietly building my own file of evidence. For 3 days, I had been working with lawyers who specialize in elder abuse, gathering proof of every threat, every manipulation, and the physical assault that had taken place that night. I pulled out photos of my bruised face taken right after the wedding, along with the medical report that confirmed it. "If they want a war," I said, "they will have one, but on my terms. It will be fought with truth, with law, and with every resource I have." Furthermore, I added with a steady smile, "I have decided to do something I should have done years ago. I am going to share my story publicly, to show what happens when greed wears the mask of family love." The air in the room shifted, filling with the quiet fire of conviction. 6 months after that night that split my life into a before and an after, I sat in a bright television studio, preparing to tell my story to the entire country. The show, Moments That Matter*, had reached out after the wedding footage surpassed 2 million views online. My story had become a national symbol of strength against elder abuse. The host, Catherine Doyle, a respected journalist known for her integrity, reviewed her notes as the crew adjusted the final lights. "Mrs. Whitaker," she said warmly, "your courage has inspired thousands. We have received hundreds of letters from people who have lived through similar pain." Her words brought me quiet pride mixed with humility. Much had changed since that night. The legal case Eric and Lauren built against me collapsed when Marcus presented undeniable evidence of their plan to have me declared incompetent. Not only did they lose, but the court fined them for filing a frivolous claim and ordered them to pay my legal fees $45,000 in total. The aftermath was swift. Eric lost his job when the scandal reached his employer. Lauren's attempt to open an image consulting business failed, her reputation destroyed by the viral videos. They now live in a small one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of town, working part-time and struggling to pay their debts. "We go live in 5 minutes," the director called out. I looked at the cameras that would soon beam my words into millions of homes and felt the steady rhythm of my heartbeat, nervousness mixed with determination. This time, I was not the woman who had been humiliated. I was the woman who had finally taken back her story. Beside me sat Marcus, who had agreed to appear on the program to explain the legal aspects of my case. In the audience were Joseph, Lily, and Amelia, my steadfast pillars through these difficult months. The hardest part of this half-year had been Eric's silence. After losing the lawsuit, he had vanished from my life completely. There were no calls asking for forgiveness, no letters acknowledging his mistakes, no attempt to make things right. It was as if he had decided it was easier to despise me than face what he had done. Lauren, however, had tried to reach out several times. Her messages had shifted from legal threats to desperate pleas for help. The last one, just 2 weeks earlier, read, "Margaret, I know we made mistakes, but we are still family. Eric is sick from stress, and I am pregnant. Please, you cannot let your grandchild live in poverty." The news had pierced my heart. I was going to be a grandmother, but my grandchild would grow up hearing stories of resentment instead of love. Still, I had learned one of life's hardest lessons. You cannot save those who do not wish to be saved. Trying to do so only enables their self-destruction. "Mrs. Whitaker, we start in 30 seconds, Catherine reminded me. I drew a long, steady breath and thought of all the messages I had received from people sharing their own stories of pain. Seniors whose children had taken their savings, parents manipulated through guilt, grandparents blackmailed with threats of never seeing their grandchildren again. We are live in 3, 2, 1. The red light blinked on. Catherine's practiced voice filled the studio. "Good evening, and welcome to Time's Moments That Matter *. I am Catherine Doyle, and tonight we have with us Margaret Whitaker, a 68-year-old woman whose story has moved the nation and sparked a national conversation about elder abuse within families. Mrs. Whitaker," she said gently, 6 months after your son's wedding, how does it feel knowing your story has inspired so many people?" "I feel grateful," I replied, my voice steady and clear. Grateful that something so painful as losing my son could help others find courage. For a long time, I questioned myself, wondering if I was the one at fault. Now I know this happens far more often than people dare to admit. Catherine nodded thoughtfully and glanced at her notes. "Tell us about the years before that night when you began sensing something was wrong between you, your son, and his fiancée." It was the question I had been waiting for. The chance to explain how emotional and financial abuse creeps in quietly, almost invisibly. "It began with little things," I said softly, recalling every ignored sign. Remarks about my age, subtle hints that I was no longer capable, gentle pressure to make choices that benefited them more than me. Family abuse rarely begins with shouting or violence. It starts with eroding your confidence, with making you doubt your own judgment. Marcus leaned forward to add his perspective. "What Margaret describes is a textbook example of elder manipulation," he said. "Abusers, especially family, use emotional control disguised as concern before escalating to coercion. It is insidious precisely because it masquerades as love." "And when did you decide to reveal the truth about your finances?" Catherine asked. It was the moment I had prepared for the hardest decision I had ever made. "The slap," I answered quietly. "When Lauren struck me across the face in front of 130 guests because I refused to give her the keys to my apartment, I knew something had broken beyond repair. In that instant, I realized it was no longer about protecting my family from their choices. It was about protecting myself from further harm." The interview went on for nearly 45 minutes, touching every part of my story. I spoke about choosing a modest life to preserve privacy, about the secret years of financial support, about the plot to have me declared unfit, and the legal fight that exposed it all. Each answer carried both pain and purpose, meant not only to tell my truth but to guide others. "Mrs. Whitaker," Catherine asked as the program neared its end, "do you have a message for your son if he is watching tonight?" It was the hardest question, the one I had both dreaded and longed for. I looked straight into the camera, knowing there was a chance Eric was watching. "Eric, if you hear this, I want you to know I still love you. I will always love you, because you are my son. But love does not mean surrendering yourself to cruelty. Love does not mean trading your dignity for someone's comfort. Love does not mean being a victim of another's greed. The doors to my heart will always remain open for you," I said softly, my eyes filling with tears, "but only if you can walk through them as the man I raised you to be. Only if you can face me and take full responsibility for your actions. Only if you understand that family is built on respect and compassion, not selfishness and deceit." And to everyone watching who may see themselves in my story, I added, "You have the right to be treated with respect, regardless of age. You have the right to control your own life, your home, your choices. You have the right to set boundaries when loved ones cross the line, and the right to seek help when those boundaries are ignored." When the cameras turned off, the studio erupted in applause. Catherine embraced me, her eyes shining with emotion. "Margaret," she said, "that was one of the most moving interviews I have ever done. This will change lives." Marcus smiled proudly, knowing we had accomplished something far greater than winning a case. That night, driving home with Joseph, Lily, and Amelia, I felt a peace I had not known in years. I had told my truth. I had reclaimed my voice. I had transformed my pain into something that could help others. From the back seat, Lily spoke softly. "Margaret, I am so proud of you. You turned your worst ordeal into something that will protect countless others." Her words echoed deep within me as we reached my building. The apartment Lauren had once coveted now felt like home again, not because of victory, but because I had finally learned to value myself enough to demand respect. And I understood at last that sometimes the only way to save a relationship is to be willing to let it go. That night, as I prepared for sleep, I realized I had given the most important lesson of my life. It is never too late to stand up for yourself. You are never too old to demand respect. And true love, sometimes, means making the hardest choices of all. My story had ended, but my life was beginning again. 2 years have passed since that night that split my life into a before and an after. As I write these lines, I sit on the same balcony where I once watered my plants and reflected on the quiet humiliations I had accepted in the name of maternal love. How different the world looks when you finally learn to put a price on your dignity. The morning began like so many others have these past 18 months, with a call from Carmen, the coordinator of the Margaret Whitaker Foundation for the Protection of Seniors. Yes, I chose to give it my name. Carmen's voice carried the mix of sadness and resolve familiar to everyone who works in this field. "Margaret, we have 23 new cases this week," she said. "All follow the same pattern. Adult children pressuring aging parents for money or property. Every file I read feels like a reflection of my own past. Yesterday, I reviewed the case of a 72-year-old woman persuaded by her daughter to sell her home for her own good, only to learn the money funded a failed business and a European vacation. The day before, it was a 69-year-old man whose twin sons told him he would never see his grandchildren again unless he gave them $50,000. The irony is not lost on me. I have turned my deepest wound into my greatest purpose. The foundation has already helped more than 400 seniors reclaim control of their finances, their homes, and their sense of worth. We have lawyers, counselors, and social workers, everything I once wished I had when I felt lost and alone. Joseph remains my closest friend and neighbor, though now he also serves as the foundation's vice president. At 72, he says he has never felt more alive. "Margaret," he told me just last week, "I never imagined my golden years would involve playing detective for broken families, but it is the most fulfilling adventure of my life." Lily moved into the apartment next door a year ago. After leaving an unhappy marriage that lasted barely 8 months, she decided she wanted to live near, as she calls me, the bravest woman she knows. Her new role as the Foundation's education director has given her a sense of meaning she never found as a school teacher. "Aunt Margaret," she often tells me, "family is not always about blood, it is about respect and choice." The public impact of my story has brought results I could never have foreseen. The book I co-wrote with an investigative journalist, When Love Hurts, An Older Woman Fights Back, became a national bestseller with over 200,000 copies sold. Every dollar in royalties goes directly to the foundation, and the letters I receive from readers are proof that my story has reached countless homes where silence once ruled. Marcus remains my financial advisor, but now he also serves as the foundation's chief accountant. His experience from managing the legal aftermath of my conflict with Eric has become an invaluable resource in helping others facing similar struggles. Mrs. Whitaker, he told me during one of our monthly meetings, we have recovered more than $3 million in property and savings stolen from seniors by their own families. The question everyone asks me, the one that always surfaces in interviews and private talks, is whether I miss Eric. The answer is complicated and painful. I miss the boy he once was, the young man who could be kind and thoughtful. I miss the illusion of the family I believed we were. But I do not miss the manipulation, the guilt, and the constant disrespect that followed. Eric has tried to contact me only 3 times in these 2 years. The first came 6 months after the television broadcast, when his coworkers began treating him differently. The second was after his son, my grandson Owen, was born 14 months ago. The last was 3 months back, when Lauren left him, taking the baby and half of what little they owned. Each time his calls were about money, never remorse. He still sees his troubles as everyone else's fault, never as the result of his own actions. Our final conversation lasted less than 5 minutes. It ended when he said, "Mom, your pride matters more to you than your grandson." I answered with a calm I had never known. "Eric, my dignity matters as much as my grandson, and I hope he learns that lesson better than you did." It was the first time I had ever hung up on my son, and strangely, it felt freeing. The topic of Owen is the only one that can still bring me to tears. He is 14 months old and does not know who I am. When Lauren left, she took all the family photos, including the few I had of him. I have created a trust for his education, managed by Marcus, which he will receive when he turns 18, no matter what our relationship is by then. Maybe, Amelia often says during our weekly dinners, when Owen grows up, he will search for his own answers. Maybe he will want to meet his grandmother and understand for himself what really happened. Amelia has become my closest confidant, especially since she once had to draw her own boundaries with a toxic family years ago. What surprises me most about these past 2 years is how much my health has improved. Back when I lived under Eric and Lauren's pressure, I suffered from insomnia, headaches, and constant anxiety. My doctor says my current results match those of a woman 10 years younger. Margaret, Dr. Henderson told me at my last checkup, it is remarkable how the body heals when we remove the sources of stress. He was right. I walk taller now. My voice is steadier. My hands no longer tremble when I make decisions. The flower shop where I once worked closed a year ago, but I found joy again in the community garden I helped start in our building. I teach older residents about medicinal herbs and organic gardening. It keeps me grounded and surrounded by people who see wisdom as a gift, not a flaw. My days are full, 3 mornings a week at the foundation, 2 afternoons visiting seniors who need emotional support. Weekends devoted to writing my second book, this one, focused on practical ways to recognize and prevent financial abuse within families. The apartment that was once a symbol of greed has become a place of peace, creativity, and quiet strength. I have turned Eric's old room into my office, a quiet space where I welcome those who come seeking guidance. The walls are lined with thank you notes, family photos of people we have helped heal, and certificates from the universities where I've spoken. One of the most fulfilling parts of this new chapter has been mentoring women my age who are going through the same struggles I once faced. Margaret, 74, came to the foundation half a year ago after her son sold her car without permission to cover his gambling debts. We worked side by side for 3 months, and last week she sent me a picture of herself beaming beside her new car, bought with the money she had legally reclaimed. In her letter she wrote, "Margaret, you taught me that setting boundaries is survival, not cruelty. You showed me that loving yourself is a necessity, not selfishness." Her words reminded me why every ounce of pain had been worth it. Looking back on these 2 years, I understand my story doesn't have the fairy tale ending where everyone reconciles and lives happily ever after. It has something better. It has honesty, restored dignity, and a sense of purpose greater than my own suffering. I've learned that sometimes the purest form of self-love is walking away from those who refuse to stop hurting you. If I could send a message to the woman I was walking into that wedding hall 2 years ago, I would tell her, be brave. What's coming will hurt, but on the other side lies a life more real than you could ever imagine. Peace is waiting for you, the peace that comes from knowing you will never again let anyone treat you as if you are disposable. Tonight, as I finish writing these thoughts, I look toward the future with new hope. Tomorrow, I will meet with senators to discuss stronger protections for seniors facing family abuse. Next week, we open the Foundation's 3rd regional center. Next month, I begin filming a national documentary series about this cause. My life at 70 feels fuller and more meaningful than it ever did at 68. I have come to understand that the end of something toxic is not a tragedy, it is freedom. I have learned that real family is as much chosen as inherited, and I have proven to myself that it is never too late to begin again. When people ask if I regret what I did that night, my answer never changes. Did you enjoy my story? And which city are you listening from? Let me know in the comments. If this story touched you, you can support my work by sending a small token of appreciation, so I can continue sharing more stories like this. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your kindness. I cannot wait to read your thoughts below. On your screen, you'll find 2 more stories of life that I highly recommend. There's so much more waiting for you here. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you again in the next life story with love and respect.